Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you're very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat, and we're back with another look at the history news headlines to mark the first Friday of the month. This time we're looking at the headlines that caught my eye last month in March 2022. And I should probably also address the fact that this video is going to be going live on April Fool's Day, but despite that, there isn't going to be any fooling in this video. I do, however, hope that there might be some fun history japes that have been published today, and if there are, then I will be sharing a selection of them in next month's video, assuming they exist. As always, I'll be using the description box to link the history news articles we're looking at today, in addition to any other relevant materials. We have some updates, some new news, and also the return of our new segment that looks at the upcoming and recently opened events and exhibitions from around the world. Also, if you want to refresh your memory on any of the previous History News Roundup videos, then do check out the linked playlists. They have been divided by year, so we have playlists from 2021 and 2022. Right, I think that's the preamble done. And we have got a lot to cover this month. So let's jump right in. Updates first. I first talked about this particular story at the start of this year, in relation to a History News article from December 2021. But of course, the updates came last month, on the 8th of March, which was also International Women's Day. On that day, the Witches of Scotland group saw one of their pleas be granted, because First Minister Nicola Sturgeon offered a formal apology to the approximately 4,000 Scottish people that were accused of breaking the Witchcraft Act between 1563 and 1736. The next step for these successful campaigners is to secure an official pardon for those that were convicted under the Act. QC Claire Mitchell explained that such a pardon would correct, at least as far as possible, a, quote, terrible miscarriage of justice. We are informed that Natalie Donn of the SNP is planning a members' bill that would extend that pardon. The First Minister, for her part, was said to have noted that Parliament may in fact choose to legislate in due course. So, it looks like we might be getting a further update on this story, which I will of course pass on if and when it arrives. What would this update section be without making mention of the Benin bronzes? Well, I was made aware of this particular development by Laurie Brown on Twitter, so many thanks to you, Laurie. The Smithsonian has announced that they will be returning their collection of Benin artworks to Nigeria. Currently, the museum holds 39 pieces, which are all set to be returned following the signing of an agreement with the Nigerian National Commission for Museums and Monuments. This agreement will include provisions for long-term loans, shared exhibitions, and education programs in Nigeria. It's possible that this signing may take place as early as this month, so April. Additionally, the Washington Post points out that this repatriation represents the first under the Smithsonian's new policy of ethical returns, that calls for its museum leaders to consider the moral circumstances surrounding the ownership of the 155 million artworks, artefacts, and natural science specimens in its collection. So, with this in mind, it perhaps looks like we might be hearing about repatriations from the Smithsonian for some time to come. Meanwhile, in merry England, the British Museum has made the, to my mind at least, regrettable decision to refuse permission for the Institute of Digital Archaeology to make 3D scans of the Parthenon marbles. And in response, that institute is said to be preparing to take legal action against the British Museum. As to why the British Museum has decided to respond in this way, Perhaps we need to look no further than what such a set of 3D scans might make possible, namely the creation of high-quality replicas, which would presumably only serve to increase the pressure for the British Museum to return the original marbles to Greece. John Beck, founder of Scan the World, has had some robust words to say in response to hearing news of the museum's decision. Indeed, Beck is quoted as saying, "I'm hardly surprised that this toxic institution, which relies so heavily on its flimsy backbone of a dated British legal system, is snubbing the thought of something that would bring the museum into the 21st century. For a museum that is asking for £1 billion of funding to get a facelift, I'm shocked that they are not open to discussing new means of monetisation and fairness in their collections. They happily work with corporate 3D partners who look to join in the monetisation and closing of digital heritage, which is surprising for a place that claims it is the museum of the world. Our community has scanned the marbles, and we will aim to remove any reference to the British Museum's shocking work in caring for them." Here's the thing. The technology exists. The creation of replicas is possible, and simply refusing to allow those scans to take place doesn't make any of that any less true. And as it is, it seems to me that the scans have been taken anyway, and this took place presumably without permission and in secret. I mean, that is, if John Beck's statement is anything to go by. Nevertheless, there is still potentially a legal challenge to the British Museum that's in the offing. If that's filed, and when there is a decision in the matter, I will, of course, let you all know. Next up, and for our last update, we have a story that connects to another story that I covered this time last year. Or at least this story that we're about to look at reminded me of the story from last year. It was the one regarding the Metropolitan Museum of Art's plan to pay their staff salaries with funds from the sale of deaccessioned artworks. And back in 2021, this news was met with perhaps understandable concern. However, the article we're about to look at does refer to the sale of one of their pieces. However, in this case, the proceeds from this sale are not intended to fill the salary gap, which was controversial, but rather to support the purchase of new items for the museum, which is and was approved. So it was that last month the Met announced that they will be auctioning off a bronze cast of a woman's head by Pablo Picasso, and this will be taking place through Christie's. The date for this planned auction has not been announced, but the estimated amount the piece will fetch has been. This bronze is expected to fetch around $30 million. The Met's reasoning for deaccessioning and auctioning off this piece is that they have recently received a donation of another version of the same piece of work. Art News explains that, quote, "The bronze sculpture, the one that's being auctioned, entered the museum's collection in 1995, when it was donated from the estate of Florine M. Schoenborn, who was a life trustee of the Museum of Modern Art. The duplicate cast, head of a woman, which the museum has opted to keep, was given by Lauder, a current trustee of the Met who promised 78 works from his collection of Cubist art to the Met in 2013. We might be looking at a couple of updates for this story then. One being once the auction takes place and we learn how much the piece sold for and potentially to whom. The other being if or when we hear about other Met collection items being deaccessioned and auctioned. Those were the updates, and now it's time to look at the new news. An article written by an international team of paleontologists, which has just been published in the journal Royal Society Open Science, asserts that paleontology is a hotbed of unethical practices rooted in colonialism, which only serves to exploit local communities. Linda Geddes, writing about this publication for The Guardian, explains that the hoarding of specimens in foreign collections and the exclusion of local experts from studies, quote, amounts to scientific colonialism. where lower income countries are perceived primarily as sources of data or specimens for higher income ones, legal frameworks bypassed, and the contributions of local researchers devalued and omitted. The team behind the article are calling for there to be a focus on creating meaningful partnerships with the communities that inhabit the areas that are of interest to paleontologists. The team also want there to be, quote, more rigorous journal guidelines and education on research ethics, greater enforcement of fossil laws, and sanctions against those involved in unethical practices. Finally, fossils should be repatriated to those communities from which they have been taken. If and or indeed when there are any developments in regard to this article and its calls to action, I will certainly be providing an update. Last month, the auction house Dix Noonan Webb was responsible for the sale of this incredibly rare coin. This is a 23-carat gold leopard florin that was minted at the Tower of London in 1344, during the reign of Edward III. As a form of currency, florins like this were a short-lived innovation, which makes them so much more rare. At the time it was minted, this coin would have had the purchasing power of roughly £2,000 or $2,670 in today's money, all of which must have made it pretty impractical. I mean, imagine trying to get change from this coin when all you've bought is, say, a 1-penny cup of ale. This coin is one of 5 leopards that are known to survive today, and it was found by a metrodetectorist who was searching a farmer's field in Norfolk in October 2019. It was thought that the coin would fetch between £100,000 to £140,000, and as it was, it sold for the upper estimate of £140,000, which is around $185,000. But if we consider the 24% buyer's premium that goes on top of that, the coin's total sale price was £173,600, which is around $228,885. The auction house has said that the coin was purchased by a private collector from the UK. Now, of course, I wonder what their plans for the coin are, and I especially wonder whether they are planning to loan it to an institution so that we can all at least have the chance of seeing it in person. The next headline we're going to look at is the one that I think probably got the most mainstream news attention, and understandably so. The Falklands Maritime Heritage was able to confirm, with the support of some utterly incredible underwater photography, that they had located the wreck of Endurance, Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship. This ship was last seen above water in 1915, when it became trapped in the ice of the frozen Weddell Sea. There are photographs that survive that show this trapped ship. The sea ice would eventually crush and sink the vessel. In addition to the achievement of relocating this vessel, despite the challenges of this being an ice-covered wreck, what has stunned many who have seen both the video and the stills of the wreck is just how perfect and intact it is. Marine archaeologist Menson Bound has been quoted as saying the following: "You can even see the ship's name, Endurance, arced across its stern directly below the taffrail." This is a handrail near the stern. "And beneath, as bold as brass, is Polaris, the 5-pointed star after which the ship was originally named. I tell you, you would have to be made of stone not to feel a bit squishy at the sight of that star and the name above. You can see a porthole that is Shackleton's cabin. At that moment, you really do feel the breath of the great man upon the back of your neck." We will not be seeing Endurance, or indeed any artefacts from her, on land though, because this wreck is a designated monument under the International Antarctic Treaty and thus must not be disturbed in any way. No physical artefacts have therefore been brought to the surface. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty grateful that we have access to such high quality camera technology so that all of us can see endurance where she rests now. The thanks for bringing our next history news headline to my attention goes to Twins Things on Twitter. You shared this article about the discovery of the oldest street in Berlin. Located 2.5 metres below the current road surface, during the ongoing excavations in and around the Molkenmarkt, or Way Market, which is Berlin's oldest market square, archaeologists have found this medieval plank walkway that was constructed in the 13th century. Now, this news item could also have been saved for our events and exhibition section that's going to be coming up at the end of this video, because, quite excitingly, the State's Monument Office of Berlin will be offering tours of the walkway once a week throughout 2022. If anyone happens to make it onto one of these tours, please do let us know what you thought of it in the comment section. There's a new historical drama that is set to be coming our way, although we don't yet have a release date for it. Called Firebrand, it's being billed as a thriller that explores Catherine Parr's marriage to Henry VIII. And the reason the production was in the news last month was because it was announced that Alicia Vikander will be replacing Michelle Williams in the role of Catherine Parr. She will be playing opposite Jude Law as Henry VIII. So this is the first that I'm hearing about this project, but I am wondering if it was actually fairly well publicised, but I somehow missed it. So do let me know if any of you had heard anything about Firebrand. Also, I want to know if you are excited to see this when it is released. I need to offer my thanks once again to Twins Things for sharing this next article with me on Twitter. And I also want to thank the big group of people that shared it with me on TikTok too, as a potential addition to my No Touchy Touch series over on that platform. Now, I have already answered the TikTok please with a video response to this find over there. And if you haven't seen that already, or indeed my TikTok, probably should give a fair warning. I am much more irreverent on TikTok than I am here on YouTube. What I am referring to is this report of the discovery of a lead sarcophagus beneath Notre Dame Cathedral. The archaeological investigation that found this particular item is occurring in tandem with the reconstruction efforts that are underway in the aftermath of the fire that damaged the cathedral back in 2019. Indeed, CNN reports that, quote, "The excavation works inside the cathedral were commissioned as a precautionary measure before the installation of scaffolding needed to restore a 100-metre high wooden roof ridge." It is suspected that this sarcophagus dates back to the 14th century, and that it presumably holds the remains of some high dignitary. So far, archaeologists have been able to send a small camera into the sarcophagus, which, quote, showed cloth remains and organic matter, such as hair and plant remains. Further investigation of this sarcophagus, and indeed of Notre Dame Cathedral, is ongoing. So, when or if we have updates, confirmations, and perhaps even news of other finds, I will certainly be letting you know. So, there are frequently history news headlines that act as a reminder that you should be checking your basement, attic, back of the wardrobe for any priceless antiques that you never knew you had. Well, consider this notice that you also need to be checking your garden as well. Back in 2002, a couple purchased a sculpture that they planned to use to decorate their garden. They spent £5,200 on this piece in a garden statuary auction. But before long, the sculpture's true identity was uncovered. Known as the recumbent Magdalene, it is one of the last marble sculptures to be completed by the great Italian artist Antonio Canova before his death in 1822, and it depicts Mary Magdalene in a state of grief. 20 years after that 2002 auction, and the piece is once again going up for sale. It's set to be auctioned by Christie's this summer, and it is expected to fetch quite a bit more than it did in 2002, which is unsurprising because, of course, now its true origin and identity is known. As such, it is thought this piece will be able to achieve between £5 million and £8 million at auction, As always, I will be keeping my ear to the ground for any updates regarding how much the sculpture actually goes for, and perhaps, just as long as they do not wish to remain anonymous, who exactly ends up purchasing it. Researchers investigating Paleolithic hand stencil paintings from a collection of Spanish caves have found that up to 25% of the hand marks were not large enough to belong to either teenagers or indeed adults. Instead, the researchers assert that these handprints most likely came from children who were aged between 2 and 12, with the majority coming from 3 to 10-year-olds. They add that because these images would have been made by blowing the pigments at the wall through a hollow reed or a bone tube, it would have required quite a lot of force in blowing, and as such, they believe that it must have been necessary for the children whose hands are shown to receive the help of parents or indeed other adults. There is also a suggestion that these images might have been a form of non-verbal language, and this is something that researchers will be looking to investigate next. Of course, I will let you know if or when they come to any conclusions. A collection of more than 400,000 aerial photographs, which is able to cover 30% of England from 1919 up to the present day, are going to be going online. Historic England is launching a photography tool that's going to allow users to explore this collection in order to get a sense of the changing landscape of the parts of England that are covered by these images. So, is your area going to be one of the ones that feature in these photographs? Are you planning to search for anything in particular using this tool? And if you do use the tool, what will you find? Perhaps you'll be happy to let us know in the comments section. Now we're moving on to the last of our history news headlines, and up next we will be discussing events and exhibitions. But this headline is another one that I was grateful to receive on Twitter, so thank you to Jane for sending this my way. In 1973, the Sydney Opera House opened, and the celebrations to mark this occasion were attended by many, of course. One of their number was a Lardil man called Mr. Philip or Phil Jack. Mr. Jack is described as, quote, a great teacher, an elder. He was very respected. Mr. Jack was also part of a dance group, and he had performed as part of a troupe in Sydney in the run-up to the Opera House's opening. In those performances, he had worn this traditional Lardil dance hat. Mr. Jack then gave this dance hat to his neighbour, Mr. Maurice Ralphin, because Mr. Maurice Ralphin was planning on moving home to the UK and Mr. Jack wanted to give him a keepsake. Several years ago, Mr. Ralphin began to make inroads into finding a way of returning this gift to its traditional owners. Last month, there was a ceremony in Canberra which marked the return of the headdress. The headdress is set to be displayed for educational purposes. I haven't been able to track down when or indeed where this display is due to happen, but if or indeed when I find out, I will of course let you all know. So we may not know when or indeed where this Lardil headdress is going on display, but there are certainly some events and exhibitions that we do have both dates and locations for. And so, let's move on to talking about them now. But firstly, I do want to thank everyone who reached out to me on social media to let me know your thoughts on this new segment and also on the exhibitions and events that were discussed in it. A few of you were even kind enough to let me know about your experience of attending. And as the response was pretty much overwhelmingly positive, I think we will be continuing to include this segment in these monthly videos. As we look at these upcoming dates for our calendars, please do keep updating us all with the ones that you are planning to see, and indeed your thoughts of the ones that you have seen. First up, there is the exhibition Scribbling and Doodling, from Leonardo da Vinci to Twombly, and this is set to run across 2 venues. One of those venues is the Villa Medici in Rome. This exhibition opened last month and is due to close on the 22nd of May. The other site is the Beaux-Arts in Paris, and that's opening on the 19th of October 2022 and is set to run until the 15th of January 2023. This exhibition is showcasing a collection of nearly 300 scribbles, doodles and sketches made by some of the best-known names in art. These are individuals who span the Renaissance right up to the present day. The first ever exhibition of all of Donatello's major works has already opened in Florence. Now, the pieces have been shared out between the Palazzo Strozzi and the Bargello. They will remain on display until the 31st of July 2022, at which point this exhibition is set to close. But if you can't get to Florence before July, all may not be lost, because The Guardian is reporting that the Stadtliche Museum in Berlin is set to host its own version of this exhibition from the 2nd of September 2022 until the 8th of January 2023. And then, following on from this, the V&A Museum in London has its own version of the exhibition that is also set to open in 2023. However, the exhibitions in Berlin and London can't boast the fact that they have all of Donatello's known works, because some of the items will not be making a journey out of Italy, namely a collection of bronzes from Siena Cathedral and also from Florence's Basilica of San Lorenzo. So, if you do want to see the exhibition in its entirety, then you are going to need to make a trip to Florence before the end of July, which, if you can manage it, doesn't feel like much of a hardship to me. Next up, we have an upcoming display of items that were believed lost until recently. In 1860, a pair of Japanese folding screen paintings were sent to Queen Victoria as part of a lavish diplomatic gift. Indeed, these screens are described as having, quote, marked a new era of diplomatic engagement between Japan and Britain. We are told that they brought the vivid beauty of Japan's changing seasons right to the heart of the British court. The screens in question have recently been rediscovered in the Royal Collection, and they have had to undergo extensive conservation work. But they are now ready, and they are set to go on display as part of the Japan Courts and Culture exhibition that is going to open in the Queen's Gallery at Buckingham Palace on the 8th of April. For those with a head for heights, which is definitely not me, the Cutty Sark in Greenwich is offering people the opportunity to climb their masts. This particular experience will allow you to climb 20 metres above the deck. I have to say that just thinking about what that would be like makes my feet and fingers go a bit numb and feel funny. But if this is the sort of thing that floats your boat, pun firmly intended, then do crack on and maybe let us know what you think. Perhaps have somebody take some pictures to show you in all of your bravery. This experience will be available from the 2nd of April, and it's going to cost £41 for adults and £26 for children. And included in this fee is the admission that will let you look around the rest of this quite extraordinary tea clipper that dates from the 1800s. If, however, you are a bit more like me and would certainly want to look around the Cutty Sark, but at the same time you would always want to keep your feet at no higher than deck level, then you can buy tickets without the mast climb at £15 for adults and £7.50 for children. Last, but by no means least, the National Museum of Asian Art in Washington, D.C. has a really cool looking exhibition on currently, and it's titled Falcons, the Art of the Hunt. This exhibition is hosting a selection of paintings and objects from ancient Egypt, Iran, India and China that all depict and indeed celebrate the art of falconry. This exhibition is scheduled to remain open until the 17th of July 2022, so still a bit of time to go. That's all I've got for news items and exhibitions, but I think it's worth mentioning now that I have started saving up exhibitions and events that aren't opening right away, and I have spotted some crackers that I'm looking forward to telling you about in the near future. So if you see something that you think needs to be added to this segment, please do let me know. I personally find it easiest when I get tagged in things on Twitter, but of course, any of my social media would be a great place to reach me. So what do you think of any or all of the headlines that we've looked at today? Were there any history news headlines that caught your eye in March that I didn't discuss in this video? And what about any exhibitions and events that you might have spotted? As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comments section underneath this video, or you can find me over on social media. I will leave links to the other places you can find me on the internet in my description box. Follow me over on some or all of those so that we can continue this conversation and indeed start some others. I do hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. And if you did, why not share it with some of your friends? And please also let me know you liked it by hitting the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel and also hit the bell icon that sits beside the subscribe button so that then there'll be a drop down that appears. Hit all in that drop down and that should make YouTube tell you when I've next uploaded. I do hope you're going to have a great day whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.